Welcome to the first ever, we'll name this podcast later. I did not spend enough time thinking about this.
No, you should name it Beonby Podcast.
That's really boring and generic.
Or the Beonby Pod. Or the Beonby Cast. Or the Beonby PC.
The Beocast.
Beonby Cast. The Beyond Cast.
Cast Beonby in any movie. I will accept it gratefully.
Beonby PC. Okay, we are going to review and recap.
Alright, let's get to it.
What are we reviewing and recapping, Ben?
Well, today we are going to be reviewing and recapping whatever. And you will enjoy it because that's the way the cookie crumbles.
That is the way that...
You know, it is actually ridiculous what Spotify wants you to do to put a podcast on there. It's not hard to put music on there. No. But in order to put a podcast on there, you need to make a website. And it has to be this thing called an RSS feed. So you have to make a website, get the rights to own it, put the link in Spotify, and then it does the rest for you, which is convenient but also not. So I decided I'm not going to go through the struggle of making a website. I'm just going to upload it through my distributor and call it music.
Oh.
For free.
Wait, so you have to make a website?
If you want Spotify to recognize it as a podcast, yes, but
why is
I don't
that?
care. I don't know.
Okay.
They made it simple for everything except, podcasts.
So my definition of podcasts is people complaining / talking about world problems. And so right now we are going to look up 10 most prominent
Legalized marijuana. Recreational marijuana. How about that?
Is that a world Okay, climate change. Destruction of nature. 48.8% would say this is a problem. Do you think so?
Why only 48%? Are the rest of them just like...
No, like 48% of the 100... Like, if there are 10 of the top world problems, climate change is like 48% of that, I think. So, let's see. Number 10 is, we're actually going to go from least to highest, is lack of economic opportunity and unemployment.
Is this a problem in the U.S.?
Well, it's a problem anywhere, really.
But the article's written in English.
Less so, it's world problems, Ben.
World problems, I understand now.
U.S. has a lot of problems, but so does the world. Okay.
I feel like you'd experience that a lot in, like, China.
Well, it is, yeah, I don't know, I've never been there before, I can't...
They are the most populous country, and they do have the second biggest economy, so...
They do, well, lack of economic opportunity, Ben.
Yeah, because so many people are trying to get jobs because they have so many different classes graduating at the same time, so they have so many people who need opportunities, but all these opportunities are filled because they have so many people.
Okay, that also brings me to another point, and that is communism. Communist, as we've seen throughout the past couple hundred years,
Mostly the last 100 years.
Last century, sorry, never mind. Communism is taking a good old rise and fall. Starting with the communist revolution in Russia.
Yes.
And evolving into so many other places and continents around the world.
It's just countries.
Yeah, yeah. And America's struggle to fight it. But the thing with communism is it doesn't work.
It doesn't. The theory works.
The theory is beautiful.
But it would only work if if every government leader and every person in the country was just utopian and they had no corruptness or faults whatsoever.
So, like when you talk about a country like that is very, very, very publicized in the last 10 years, we're gonna talk about North Korea. North Korea. So, it doesn't work. And I was actually watching a video the other day, about North Korea and how the only way their people aren't starving is because of capitalism. And they allow the people to grow their own food in gardens and sell it on the street. And that they used to not allow that, and that's back a decade ago, and everybody was starving.
Two things. I would argue that North Korea isn't communist. It's more authoritarian and monarchy.
Yeah,
essentially.
I guess you're right. But China is another example. It has an economy rivaling that of the United States, and that is only because of capitalism. You see these specialized economic zones along the East Coast that are capitalist and allow for capitalism.
You realize this is an audio podcast.
What do you mean?
Like, they can't see that you just pointed at a map.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just showing that to you.
Yeah, I know. It's they have a capitalist economic system because they allow people to own private businesses, but they're politically communist.
Some places they have a capital economic zone, like Shanghai. It is a very rapidly growing city.
In the last 30 years, it's just boomed into prosperity.
Yeah, and I think just also the population crisis in China. The other day I was looking up the top 10 biggest cities in the world, and
man, you did a lot of stuff yesterday.
No, the other day, Ben.
Okay.
That refers to the past 3 weeks. Yeah. So So about 50 or I'd say about 25 of the top 50 biggest countries in the world, cities in the world are China, and a lot of those are ones that we have never heard of. What do you think the most populous city in the world is?
It's a good question. I don't know. It could be. It's not anywhere in,
It is in China. Let me tell you that. And
okay.
Have you heard of a city called Chongqing?
I have not.
That's what I said when I looked it up. I've never seen or heard of Chongqing in my life, and yet it's the most populated city in the world.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, let's do some research on Chongqing. Okay, so it is a sprawling municipality. This is courtesy of Wikipedia.
It's the devil. Wikipedia is actually the devil.
It is a sprawling municipality at the confluence. I don't know what that word means.
Okay, just look up the population of it.
Oh my god. Okay, let me just say this. Chongqing is a sprawling municipality at the confluence of the Yangtze and the Qiaoling rivers in southwestern China. In the city center, the large dome Great Hall. Yeah. So, I've never heard of it, and it is the most populous city in the world with a whopping 30.48 million citizens.
It's 3 times more than New York City.
That's a lot more than 3 times. It's 3.5 times.
Okay, my bad.
So, New York City has 8.623. So
I thought they had 10.
No.
Maybe that's just New York in total.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it probably is New York in total. But it just goes to show you how since around the 60s or 70s, China went from a kind of not doing so well to...
I mean, that was because of Mao.
Mao Zedong?
Mao Zedong.
Yeah. So anyway, all these black dots you see... Oh wait, they can't see that.
They're cities, because this is an audio podcast. I have a map on my wall we're looking at, and he's pointing out cities in the country of China. And they're represented by black dots.
And just all over, if you like cut it in half vertically, it's just every couple, like every 50 miles, there's just a huge black dot, and it will keep spreading. Although when you look just down at India, it is said by like 2020 or something, their population is supposed to surpass that of China.
I thought it was like in a couple of years, not in a year. India does have a very fast growing population, but that isn't also necessarily a good thing either.
No, I think especially Southeast Asia, is a very rapidly growing population with sub-ideal places for habitation.
Yeah, I think most of the people that live in, like the majority of the population that is in India, they, maybe not the majority, but a lot of people certainly live in slums in India.
Yeah, it says China and India combined currently account for almost 40% of the world's population, and it's kind of amazing considering that. Okay. You want me to keep doing it? Okay. Can you cut GarageBand?
I can, but I'm not going to, because podcasts are unedited, they are free, you can say whatever you want, but don't.
Okay. Well, anyway.
Let's get back to it.
Yeah, let's get back to it. Cut that part out, Ben, please. Thank you. I don't really know how podcasts work. Oh, that was pretty stealth. Okay, so unemployment, I think it ravages those two countries. That was really deep right there. And just the what's it called? I don't know, what are you talking about? Okay, well, I just, moving on.
Okay, good, alright, good talk.
Safety, security, and well-being is number 9.
Number 9, yeah, this is a big problem. Especially, I feel like, definitely in the Middle East, lots of Africa. Yeah.
Yeah, so,
maybe a little bit of, the entirety of Russia.
Well, yeah, but not as much as, places like South Sudan and Yemen that are, actually going through, some
pretty hardcore issues.
Yeah, and even Syria.
Oh, yeah, definitely Syria. Israel, pretty much every country in, the Middle East, but for very drastically different reasons.
Yeah, and, well-being, another one of those things. Just statistically, I read this thing a few years ago about how.
How do you remember this thing from a few
years ago? It was a very deep article. It was about how the 3 happiest countries in the world.
One of them is Denmark, right?
Yeah, Denmark. Are like that for 3 different reasons, and they're Costa Rica, Denmark, and Singapore.
Costa Rica
and
Singapore?
Yeah, and Singapore. So Costa Rica, because everybody's happy, or not everybody's happy, but they talked to, I don't know, this was a while ago, but they talked about the close community and just the culture there. Yeah, the culture there is super unique, and everybody's kind of close together, and that kind of makes it just kind of happiness, yeah.
Yeah.
So and then Denmark is because their economy is.
It's okay.
It's good. It's good. I think I kind of forget theirs. It's like a mix between having money and having happiness, or having money and having a close community, and everybody kind of just
They are 6th in Europe.
In Europe.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. So just like in between having money and having like a close sense of community. So yeah, and then Singapore because
It's so small. It's the size of a city.
well and the money. Like
And the
everybody.
They bring home the bacon a lot.
Yeah, it's just so it shows like just these 3 completely different countries have such a happy population because of 3 completely different things.
Yeah.
And then safety and security.
Yeah, definitely in the Middle East. But
Yeah.
there are different reasons though. For in Israel, you feel terrified because everyone around you wants to kill you. And then, if, for example, in Saudi Arabia, you feel terrified because if you say or do one wrong thing, you're gonna be killed. And even though it's on such broad ends of the spectrum, they still have similarities in some ways.
Yeah, and another thing that I feel like has kind of been overshadowed in the whole conundrum with Syria and stuff is Iran.
Oh yeah,
how
they're building a nuclear bomb.
Yeah, and how the Trump administration has kind of been handling both in Syria and Iran. And yeah, so yeah, safety and security, that's a pretty big one, especially in Northern Africa, Middle East, places like that. Russia.
Yeah, and definitely Venezuela now as well, because everyone has heard about how their economy is just doing great.
Yeah.
Their economy has gotten so bad, and their inflation has gotten so bad that criminals can no longer afford to buy bullets. It costs like some quadrillion amount of bolivars, I think that's the currency, some quadrillion amount of bolivars to buy a single chicken, not even rotisserie, just like a single chicken. And they're just spiraling out of control. They're spiraling out of control. The only reason why they've not devolved into full civil war yet is because China and Russia support them.
Yeah,
because whatever side the United States is on, Russia and China have to always be on the other side politically.
Yeah. And that goes back to like the Cuba days and the Fidel Castro type things. Yeah. And it's kind of similar. You see like the dictator and then the people and then the US. Yeah. It's similar in a lot of ways.
And ironically, in the US, who supports Venezuela, or supports like not Venezuela like the country, but like getting them back on their feet, we have a lot of socialists in this country. And some of them are considering running for office under the US. And some of them want to make America a socialist country.
Yeah, and like, well, yeah, some of that is like a little bit extreme, but some of that actually
they have good intentions, but it doesn't work. Just like communism.
Yeah.
It's just a softer form of communism is all it is.
Yeah. Okay, and another global crisis going on is lack of education. And that is extremely...
That is a big problem.
Extremely pertinent to places like Africa and...
It's mostly Africa, isn't it?
Yeah, but even places...
Again, the Middle East.
Yeah, especially places that are going through some tough times politically, like Venezuela and the Middle East. And it kind of, yeah, the kids. Yeah, it's like, I think people kind of overlook, the lack of education in a lot of countries, but
yeah.
It can really be rough and really... Yeah.
And especially, like, it's not even just that, people aren't getting educated, it's just that, like, girls aren't getting educated either. It's, if people are getting educated, it's 99% of the time, in these kinds of areas, it's usually boys.
Yeah. Yeah. So So yeah. And another one is...
Oh, your face got wide for a bit, like your eyes. This must be a big one.
No, actually, yeah, I don't hear this one often, but food and water security. Oh, okay, I thought it said food and water and security. Water security.
Water security, like naval stuff. I guess, like it's part of it.
No, like actual drinking water that's left.
Oh, like literal water.
Yeah, so how everywhere, like...
So, like clean water. Huh.
Like clean water to drink, and how fresh water is depleting so fast. And in, like, third world countries, especially in Europe, that in relatively soon, they're gonna start, their water's gonna start going away, like London and England and Spain and South Africa, all those places, their fresh water supply and their sources of fresh water kind of going away. And even places in the United States, especially the Southwest and the Colorado River.
Oh, yeah.
Like places like Phoenix, and even in California, like Los Angeles, and how that's super, super just bad for the future, because...
yeah, speaking of which, that kind of reminds me, in science, a couple days ago in science class, we watched a movie about the Colorado River and why it's shrinking and how it's shrinking. And it was honestly kind of sad to look at, like, just how much has decreased over even a couple 100-year time period.
Yeah, and what's scary is, like, when you think of lack of water, you think of, like, third world countries, or, like, lower economically privileged countries.
Kind of the same thing. Yeah.
But it's kind of scary when you hear places like England and Spain, places in Europe with...
Yeah, like rich countries that
like,
can afford to go through this kind of stuff.
That have their water supplies depleting, because it doesn't really have to do with the money thing. It has to do with the geography thing and where their country is located.
I mean, I would argue it doesn't always have to do with geography, because Israel is 90% desert, and yet they have amazing water systems. They constantly provide themselves more than enough water they need, and they provide so much water they give it to others. They give some water to other countries.
Yeah, and like places like Israel, they are super, super devoted to water and fresh drinking water.
Conservation as well.
Yeah, where other countries kind of overlook it and don't really notice it as much. And the thing with desalinating water, and how, like, take England, for example, there's water all around them, but desalinating water is so bad for the oceans and the environment.
Yeah.
And it's not really a sustainable option either. And
doesn't that, like, produce brine? Is that what it is?
It's brine. It's called brine. And desalinating plants, they just shove it into the ocean, and it's super bad. It's nasty. So yeah, the water crisis is definitely one to keep in mind. This one, we've kind of already talked about this one. Government accountability and transparency / corruption.
Corruption. Oh, here we go.
Yeah. So this has definitely been a problem ever since the first civilizations of mankind.
I mean, it's not something that, necessarily you can control, because, like, human nature just always wants one person to be favored, or one to favor his or her own needs over others, because they just want to benefit themselves and don't care about the long run.
Yeah, that's kind of... that is definitely one of the main reasons why corruption is such a prominent thing in places like even in ancient Rome and ancient China. The emperors were always well, not always, but a lot of the time they were a lot of the time they were very selfish, and they would go very far lengths to benefit themselves. And today you see it all around, like places like Venezuela and North Korea and
Russia a little bit. China.
Yeah, Russia a little bit.
Even the U.S.
Yeah, even the U.S. So, yeah. Yeah, we kind of already talked about that one. Oh, goodness. Number 5 is religious conflicts.
Oh, here we go.
So,
Middle East showdown.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not even just like the Jews versus the Arabs. It's also kind of
It's everywhere.
the Arabs versus the Arabs in the Middle East, because we have the Sunni Muslims and we have the Shia Muslims, I believe that's pronounced. And I think the Shia ones have like the more extreme side with Shia law.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's like you kind of just see the like aggressiveness everywhere. Not just those two religions, but everywhere.
Yeah, even on my sister's campus for college, they were having a discussion like about what the difference between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism was, and then all the Jewish kids in the auditorium left out in protest and went to pray.
Yeah, it's something that has been around for so long, thousands of years, since ancient Rome, and something that will probably be around for a lot longer than that. There's not really one way to be like. It's not really one way to settle everything, but yeah, it's kind of.
I really hope that religious conflict is not the reason humans go extinct.
Yeah. And the next one is poverty.
Poverty. Here we go. This also applies to Asia, everywhere.
Every country in the world.
Yeah, every country in the world, but it's you see it a lot in Asia and Africa.
Africa and South America and Central America.
And everywhere.
It's like the whole Central American immigration thing has a lot to do with safety and security, and then poverty, and
because a lot of these families live in poverty and they sacrifice so much to try and get to the other side, but sometimes they don't even make it.
Yeah, and they want to come to America for a new life and a better life, and the fact that we deny it is kind of sad, but yeah, it's definitely a place that goes, or a thing that goes on everywhere in every country.
Especially, even more so now than ever, India. There's so many people living in slums, barely getting by every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it even pertains to places or especially pertains to places in, Europe. You see it everywhere. Well, not everywhere, but a lot of places.
When I was in Europe, we noticed a significant lack of homeless people.
Mm-hmm.
We probably weren't in the right areas to see that kind of thing, because we were in mostly touristy areas. But we did notice that when we went to more rural areas instead of urban areas, there did seem to be not a lot, but there was a little bit of a spike in the homeless population.
Yeah. So yeah, that'll keep. There's not really much to do about it.
Unless a world international government program was started.
Yeah.
And the people in poverty, the homeless people, they can get sick and they can infect other people, and they can also, if these people are also struggling to get by, even if one person just walks past and he's having a tough life where he's living, and he gets infected, he could run out of money and then just become the next one, and then the cycle continues.
Yeah, and
it could be something else.
So. It could happen to anybody with especially with now the healthcare prices and the prices of antibiotics and stuff going way up. It with somebody that has a lifelong illness, it's super hard to make it by with just and even or especially in America, it happens a lot. So yeah. The next one, number 3, is inequality.
Inequality, does it specify, or is it just?
It says in parentheses. It says income and discrimination.
Oh, discrimination.
So
I guess this also kind of goes back to religious religious discrimination as well, but it can just be also anything. Like, you can get discriminated for being rich.
Yeah, and big one, gender inequality and racial inequality. And you will see that everywhere. It's kind of sad how it's everywhere still. Like,
in places like Saudi Arabia, I think they just recently passed a law allowing women to drive.
Yep. It's everywhere. We'll be right back.
And we're back.
So yeah, we were just talking about inequality, and how it's not just...
If you're just joining us, we were talking about inequality in... international inequality. And going through with that.
Yeah, and how it's not just, a huge, it's very prominent when you see it in, gender inequality and, racial inequality, but also, not gonna say that. Decided not to say that. Okay!
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so all these are they all have to do with one another, but the next one, number 2, is large...
independent?
What?
Is it independent from the rest of them?
No.
Okay.
It has to do with all the other ones.
Oh.
Large-scale conflict and wars.
Wars, okay, yeah. It's kind of everything encapsulated together to make one big problem.
Yeah, like this leads to that, and all these problems that we've talked about all of them can lead to wars and conflicts in their own way.
Yeah, like, I'd expect if a war were to break out right now, I'd either expect it to be like a full scale, like World War III. I'd expect it to be like U.S.-Russia, Russia-China, China-U.S., like something
Russia,
of that regard.
You're talking about Russia, like, with China?
Or Russia and China, or against the U.S.
Yeah.
And then, like, all the smaller countries, like UK,
or like
France, Spain, everyone else will join in. Maybe Germany.
Even, like, Iran, they're kind of the tension between that's been building for the past couple of years has kind of just led to some possible thoughts. And
if Iran manages to build a bomb, then we have a huge problem. Not necessarily a huge problem, but we do have a problem on our hands.
Yeah, and even just in the past couple weeks, the president deciding to back out of Syria, and then a whole nother conflict arising on its own with Turkey and the Kurdish people in northern Syria, and then Russia coming in with Turkey. The whole, like, vacuum, U.S. leaves, Russia comes in, and it's kind of sad that for so long we've been fighting with the Kurdish people, and just so abruptly we all leave.
Decided to dip.
Yeah, and how so many of them are dying and having to flee and leave the place that we've kind of
built together with them, destroyed together with them.
Like, and we've kind of fought alongside them for so long. It's kind of sad that that's the case. And then the last one is climate change.
Climate change.
Destruction
Here we go.
of nature and destruction of environment and global warming. It's all very prominent.
We need Greta. We need Greta more than ever.
Greta Thunberg. Yeah.
I feel like she has great intentions and all. Like, all credit to her for doing what she's done. But I do think she's overhyped a little bit because she, talks about the problems. But, we don't see a lot of her doing anything about the problem.
Well, I don't think, it's not like you can, like, activism for the environment isn't necessarily, like, a physical thing. Like, activism for, global hunger. where you can go to places like facilities and distribute food like that.
Feed my starving children.
Yeah, Feed My Starving Children is one of them. But activism for climate change and the climate, it's not about doing something, it's more like the lack of doing something. Like she rowed in a boat from Western Europe all the way to America, and that is kind of the activism for the environment that people don't necessarily see, but it's the activism that is the activism. And when yeah.
How does her traveling on a boat show that she's performing activism?
Well, it's the whole greenhouse gases and everything, and how
instead of flying?
Yeah, instead of flying.
I mean, yeah, but does that really have a long-term effect on the planet?
Going back to what I just said, activism isn't a physical thing. It's either not doing something that will set an example for other people, and that's exactly what she's been doing. There's been millions of people all around the world, in Australia, Germany, France, all over Europe, all over Canada and North America, and the United States, and countries in South America, Africa, and Russia, everywhere, participating in her Friday global strike. And it's made changes, like governments with millions of people at their front step, standing there fighting for it, has made changes. And so like when people say she hasn't done anything, I think that's kind of not true, because she has.
Okay, but yeah, I will agree with you on that, but I could go and clean up 100 beaches and I wouldn't get as much recognition, but I feel like I will admit that is more work. The fact that she got so many people to rally up, I'm not against the government, but to get them to let them know what's going on.
Yeah.
But there are people who have done lots that I guess what I'm just trying to say is I wish they got even a little bit more recognition.
Yeah. And even new organizations, like especially in the global ocean cleanup, like 4Ocean and all these Oceana, they're doing all these things. These companies, they're going out, they're picking up trash, they're building coral reefs, and that's significantly helped. But yeah. And I remember talking about this in social studies last year, the whole greenhouse gas thing.
Yeah.
Even if United States went completely emissions free, like all the cars were electric, all the planes were electric, and we didn't use oil or coal or any of the unsustainable natural resources, it still wouldn't change much, because India and China and all
they're
the huge...
They're burning this stuff
all the huge
there's
countries...
no tomorrow.
Would still have to do that to make any significant change. But we could start doing more of that, more wind power and more solar panel power to set more of an example for other countries. But yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say. Yeah. Oh.
So these are the 10 global major issues currently?
Yeah, and I definitely think climate change is definitely the one with the most long-term effects, and that's probably why it is on the top of this list.
Yeah, I would
one
agree.
thing, this is probably the one with the most irreversible damage, or just irreversible.
I feel like
total.
I'm not saying this is the case with climate change, but I feel like recently there's been a lot of issues that don't get as much light as they should, just because other issues have been, they've gotten a lot of attention in news or the media, and they just overshadow everything else that could have a more severe impact. But I'm not saying that's the case with climate change. I'm just saying that I've seen it happen recently.
Yeah. So that's all the 10 on this Business Insider article that we just talked about, all 10. So yeah.
All right. Do we want to end it there?
Yeah. How long is it?
Okay. Thank you for listening to this podcast. I don't know if you listened to it all the way through or just skipped to the end because you think you're a dedicated fan. I will know. But thank you. Do we want to do some kind of thing at the end?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think the last part of this podcast should be dedicated to naming it. What should it be named?
That's a good idea. What do you have ideas for?
Well, we did just list off and converse about the top 10 most prominent world problems.
Yeah, but, we can't have an entire podcast dedicated to talking about world issues because we can talk about issues, but I don't think that would make, a great podcast as a whole because, there's also some good things you want to talk about as well, or some, not just issues, but, internet, pop culture, stuff like that.
Should we talk about that?
We'll save that for another episode.
Yeah, I think this makes a good episode. Should we call it?
Should call it a day.
We are calling the podcast a day. That is what I'm gonna. No, we should call the podcast Humanity in Crisis.
Okay, well, thank you for listening to this podcast. We hope you have enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it.
If you do not enjoy it, that's fine. You might enjoy my music a little bit more. And we thank you for listening to it. Even if you just get to the end, that's fine. And, yeah. Goodbye.